Here we have a section with testimonials, and it is implemented as a slider that goes through all the testimonials, but the source project doesn't include any JavaScript kind of support for the slider. The slider is not implemented. If we check the HTML, we only have a single slide there. So then, how can we make this into an interactive slider that uses Gutenberg blocks for the content? So we have two options. So first option is to use our favorite WordPress slider plugin, whatever that might be, and implement the slider there. Like customize the styling to make it look the same or similar to our source project. So that's one way. But we won't do that here because Pinegrow comes with a very powerful interaction library called Pinegrow Interactions. It lets us create custom web animations, and it's using GreenSock to power those animations. And GreenSock is really the best animation library out there, and Pinegrow comes with a commercial license that lets you use whatever you create in Pinegrow Interactions wherever you want with no limitations. So we will do that. So let's go to the Interactions menu and select the element, and here we say activate interactions. Also added some JavaScript code into the head. Let me open this. So normally it's not necessary to show this code, but in order to have it included on our theme, this needs to be present on the index HTML because that's the master page. All the scripts and styles from that page get included into our theme. So we also need to open index HTML and activate interactions there. So that will let us have our animation library as well as those special scripts that define styles for hiding and showing elements to make the animation accessible. So we'll include these libraries, these styles into every our page view in WordPress. Okay, let's just save and export the theme. Now we can close index and go back to the slider. Okay, but how to now implement the slider? Luckily, Pinegrow Interactions comes with a library called Blueprints. Interactions Blueprints. That also includes blueprints for sliders. So for example, here we have a horizontal slider, and all these are plain HTML CSS sliders. They don't depend on any framework. And we can use these blueprints to easily create our slider. But let's try to be smart in how we create the slider. So here we have a framework agnostic slider, and here we have a Tailwind kind of design layout. And we don't want to mix these two too much, right? So the best solution would be to create a slider block, Gutenberg block, that then lets us use other types of blocks as the slider elements. So that's why we can then without worrying about the slider features, we can just define a slide element, kind of, and use it in our slider. So we separate the content of the slider from the slider itself. And the slider we can implement as a block, as a Gutenberg block. So then we can use whatever type of other Gutenberg blocks as the content of the slider. Does it make sense? So let's do it. It's quite an advanced topic, I guess, but it's a lot of fun. And once we create something like that, we can just reuse it on any project we want. So it's kind of do it once and use it many times type of situations. So to keep this clean, let's add a new page. I'll just duplicate this and let's call it slider HTML. Okay, so now it's open and let's remove all the content. And let's go to page settings to check. Yeah, don't export this page. We don't want to export this page. We will just use it to create our slider Gutenberg block. Okay, so now let's go to the, oh yeah, we also need to activate interactions. And then here we go in interactions, blueprints, and let's take a slider and add it to the page here. So here it is. Let's test the slider. So test clicks are on, and now you see this is how it works. And it creates an endless slider. It uses some very smart ways to clone the first slide and then creates an infinite slider. And all of those are automatically then created for each slider. So it's very smart slider. And we even have a tutorial on how to create it from scratch. So I'll link it somewhere here down there in the description if you want to go into that. It's a great way to learn Pinegrow Interactions, but here we will just use it and we'll do very cool thing with creating a Gutenberg block out of the slider. So first of all, let's take a look at the structure. So we have a container, and then this container contains the slides. And then we have controls, and controls contains like the dots, page navigation dots, or I mean slide navigations, one dot for each slide. And then we also have previous and next controls. And we also have progress bar on the top. You see it? If we go over with the mouse, it disappears because then the autoplay is suspended. And then if we go away, then this autoplay will start again. But in Pinegrow, autoplay is off so that we can actually edit the slider without it moving all the time. So okay, so let's now go and create a block. So the slider element will be our block. So let's go to WordPress and say block. Let's say slider. And let's put it in our custom category, flex. So now we have the slider block. So what it has then is the container, and container will be block inner content because that's the element that will contain the slides. So let's say the allowed block types will be slide. So only slide can go in there. And then on the first slide, we will use the block action to define the slide block. Slide. The title is slide. Category custom. Flex. The parent will be slider. Okay, so let's see what's in there. So we just have an H2. So we don't want to hard code any content. So what we will do, let's add a div element. Okay, not inside H2, but like here. So this div element will be the content of our slider. So that means we'll say block inner content, and we will allow any kind of content to go in there. So that we could use like normal like texts or headings, and also our custom Gutenberg blocks as the content of the slides, of the slider slides. Okay, so let's remove the H2 placeholder, or let's put it into the inner content as a kind of placeholder just now for testing the slider. Okay, and then we can leave the controls as they are. Okay, and let's try it. Let's see what happens. I don't expect this will work like just from the first, but let's try. Let's save everything, and let's export the theme, and go to our page and reload. Let's see what will happen. So slider is here. Can't see much there. Okay. So one issue is we don't have any slider styling included in here, because slider comes with two style sheets. So one is control CSS. So let's go here, PGIA components. So we have control CSS that implements this forward, back, and these dots. And then we also have the slider itself. So what can we do? We can include these styles with our block. So we go on block. So here we have style and editor style. So style is included on the front end, and editor style is included only in the back end in WordPress. But we only have the option to select one file. So what we will do is we will create a new style sheet. Let's go here and create new file, and let's call it slider block CSS. Or let's try to organize the project even better. So let's go here, add new folder, blocks, and in blocks add new folder, slider, and then in slider let's add create new file, slider CSS. So this will contain all the CSS code required by our slider. So just be mindful like that we have the same name, slider. So let's go here, controls, and copy this and open the slider, and then go into the component slider, copy the code from here into our slider CSS. Okay, let's save it. And now let's close all of this. So this is not used anymore because we placed everything into the slider CSS. And let's remove these style sheets from the page. Just delete. So now the styles are gone. And now let's add the slider CSS to the page. So design is back, but this time it came through our slider CSS. And now on the block, we can say style, let's try this, include slider CSS. And editor style, only included when editing, so style will be included both in the backend, in the editor, and on the front end. So that's what we probably want. Okay, let's save, export the theme, reload. Okay, let's update first and reload. So, oh, okay. So we see something, and let's check the page, because here the animation library is not loaded in the editor, but it should be loaded here. And you see, slider appears to be working here just fine. So let's try something. So here is now the slider, and okay, we have 4 slides are already there. So let's just do an experiment and select the first slide and add some content, add block. So we could even add one of our custom blocks, but let's try heading. Hello, slide 1. Then let's select slide 2 and say here, poof, add new heading, slide 2. Okay, let's update, maybe it's enough. And reload. So here we have hello, slide 1, slide 2. Yeah, and it works quite well. So okay, now let's try to do something else. Let's go back to blocks, and let's define a block with our slide. So okay, test clicks, let's disable them so we can select elements on the page, and let's see how this is implemented. So we have container that has everything, and then we have the div. So the layout is not, the HTML structure is not like so great. So what we want is we want to have the text and the image of the person and the name as part of one element, so we can create a block out of that. So let's just insert a div. So this will be our slide, and then let's move this in there. And also we don't want this header on the top. So where is it? We don't want this quote to move. Let's just duplicate, and then we remove span from one and h2 from the other, and then take this one and put it outside of the of the slide, and I guess it also needs text, center text. To have it in the middle. Okay, so now what we got is element that contains the complete slide, including those quotes and the text. So let's select this div and make it into a block. So let's say block, and let's say testimonial. Testimonial. And category is again custom, flex. And the parent should be slide. So let's say we only want to use this inside a slide. Okay, and let's make it editable. I don't know, what's that? Quote. And we will use the rich text and then the image. An image size, maybe thumbnail. And the name. And what's that, like position, job title. Let's say position. Okay, so let's export and go back to the page, reload, and then here in our slider, so let's remove the heading, remove, and let's add browse all. Let's add testimonial. So, okay, here it is. It's not yet perfect, but we are getting there. So let's save and let's view. Okay. So we have the slider. But I guess it has some styling issues that we can fix, and let's go into the developers tools. So what do we have here? Okay, I think the flex creates the problem for the slide. Without it, things look much better. So what we can do, let's go back to Pinegrow. And then here in the slider, we select the slide, and then in the style panel, we have display flex, and let's just delete it. And without flex, it then also doesn't make much sense to use other flex properties. So let's just delete this. Oops, oh no, we did too much. So we need to keep the flex properties of the child. Okay, we can delete this because some like flex grow, flex shrink, flex basis, they are all controlling the size of this as a part of the flex of the parent element. So the slider container has a display flex, so that's then controlling the sizing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we have to tweak CSS occasionally. So we did that. Okay. So let's also get rid of these backgrounds. We don't need them. And for the second slider, we probably have, yeah, here on the even, let's delete backgrounds here as well. And now let's save and export. And we can just refresh. Okay, so we are getting there. What we also want is to have these dots not overlap the content, but kind of go below. So let's see how they are implemented. Okay, here PGI controls. So we have previous, so we have pagination. So let's see, so that's absolute bottom. So what would happen if we say relative? That should push them down, right? Okay, and a bit maybe use top. Actually not top, but maybe I think we need margin top. 20 pixels or so. Let's see. This is better, right? So let's do that. So just remember what we did. We disabled absolute and we added margin top. So sometimes it's easier to debug in development tools. And then just do the changes here. So we can get rid of this. And add margin top, maybe 20. Okay. Save, export, reload it here. So now let's go and add more sliders, more slides. Let's reload this as well. And then for these buttons, it looks like kind of issue with encoding. So we could use SVGs instead, or some kind of icons. But let's first do more slides. So we have 4 slides. Of course, we can add as many as we want. So if we select the slider, we can add more slides. But let's keep 4. 4 is a good number, or maybe 3. So there's less content to customize. So slide, and then we have testimonial that we can change, of course. Let's put something. Something surfing related and replace the image. Yeah, this is good. Big waves. Okay. Bob, I don't know, Ocean. Bob Ocean, okay. And then the next slide, remove the heading. Remove and say add block. and add testimonial. Okay, sorry, not very original testimonials. And a name. Okay. And one more original testimonial. Okay, here it is. So something else. Okay, let's see. Send, any send. Oh yeah, here's some send. Sorry about this, I just don't feel very inspired. I mean, it just takes a long time, so... But I think our slider is very cool, so while we type this Peter, okay. Perfect. So let's reload the page and admire our testimonials. So we have like autoplay. It will just let but if we interact with the slider, then autoplay is suspended. So quite nice. So we also have animation that displays the quote as it comes up. And we can change that, of course, like Pinegrow Interactions gives you full control over everything. So here we have a slide, and then the slide has a bunch of animations, including show content and hide content. And we can customize these animations. So show content, it simply displays the... So let's change. Let's say this we'll just target the inner div. Okay, yeah. And hide content. Maybe we don't need to hide the content, so we can either disable this animation, or we can just say here and say mute. So that disable this part. And of course, if we want to do something fancy, we just need to modify the show content animation, and that's all. And one more thing, the slide block has applied to many, but we don't need it here because the block with all this content will anyway be repeated. So all these actions are encoded in the block, so we don't need to, as we usually do when we work with static HTML, we use apply to many to copy these animations into other elements with the same selector. We don't need to do that here because these animations are already included in the block definition and therefore repeated on each block instance. So, but if we remove it here, then this will stop working here as a static page, which I guess it's okay. So let's remove apply to many. And now like save and export. And go here and reload. And go down. So yeah, now because we changed the block definition, now the block output doesn't match the saved block output, and then this triggers the WordPress attempt block recovery, which should work with no issues. let's see, slide, yeah, attempt block recovery, slide, attempt block recovery. So here it is. And we even have this cool effect when the slide that it's being edited, it just shows up. We didn't do anything to get that effect, it just works, so perfect. Okay, so let's see. So we have here. So our slider, I'm missing the effect, the show animation, show content. It should select the inner div, which is our block inner content. Okay, so what we have to do when we show something, we have to hide it before. And so we can use block inner content and then say hide at start. So that hides the element when the page is loaded, but only if JavaScript is enabled. So if there is no JavaScript, then the element will not be hidden. So that makes the animation accessible. The content should be visible even if JavaScript is turned off. So okay, let's save and export. And go here. Okay, again, we have to do the block recovery because we changed the block definition. And if the block changes many times, then we can use dynamic blocks to avoid that, but they have other drawdowns. But anyway, that's only a problem while we are still tweaking and changing the block itself, the definition of the block. Oh, see, now we have the cool animation where things appear, but only the first time, because we disabled the hide content animation. So a few more maybe things to notice, like I think here is too high up. So if we inspect the slider, we'll notice that it has kind of fixed height set, 400 pixels. So if we disable that, then this sizing looks okay. So let's go Pinegrow and slider and select the slider. And in the style menu, we see the rule. And so let's disable the height. So now it will adjust to the content of the slider. Or we could set like a minimum height just so that something is shown. Let's say 100 or so. Okay, so that's one thing. And then maybe we would like to have the active dot in the original design, it becomes green, and here it just becomes bigger. So to keep things simple, we can just go here and edit those pagination items. So let's see how they're implemented. So blocks, so they have opacity, so we can increase opacity a bit to make them lighter. And then if we check what happens, so we have current, that's the animation that makes the item kind of highlighted. So what we will do is we'll just use the green, this green here. So let's add properties, so that then background color, and let's pick the green color from the screen. Here it is. Okay, maybe a bit less of the size. Okay, save, export. And we have to go here. And probably we'll have to attempt block recovery again. Slider, okay, they look good. Okay, and here it is. So now we have, it becomes green. So we need to do one more tweak. Notice here the closing quote is cut off, and the reason is that it is positioned with absolute positioning from the bottom, and then when there is only one line of text, the area is not high enough. So let's add a class. So minimum height, but we'll use custom value like 90 pixels. And that should, so this should be enough. Let's go back here and reload. And that's one issue when we are changing the block definition. Then we have to often do attempt block recovery, because we need to update the blocks before the change is visible on the page. Yeah, so that looks about right, even with one-liners. Yeah. Okay, so one more thing. Here, the whole section, it also has this heading on the top and the section layout, so it makes sense to include that. So let's create a block, and we have testimonials, so let's call this testimonials. And category will be custom, flex. And now let's think about, so okay, so here we have the span, so that will be block attribute label, and then we need to somehow incorporate the slider. And then here we have the slide. So what we can do, let's just add one more div here. Divs are very useful. And move the slide block there. And then here we will say this is block inner content. And this block inner content should contain slider. So this will create a block that in this area can contain a slider. And then here we define the slide, and on the other page we define the slider. So let's see if this will work. It's a bit kind of a few things working together there. So let's reload. Okay, let's add the testimonials block to the page. Okay, and we got, let's see what we have. We have testimonial here. but we don't want it here because what we need is a slider. See, does this work? Can we? Because testimonial has add slider, but can we just drag the slider in there? Doesn't seem possible, which is shame. So testimonial, add slider. Can we then at least copy the slides? Oh, maybe we can do that. Okay, perfect. So we will move the slides there and remove. So Gutenberg block editor, it's a bit awkward still. I think from the user perspective side, like when you edit things like this. But with rapid improvements, I guess they should take care of any quirks soon. So anyway, so now we have the quotes, and here is a leftover from before. We don't need those dots anymore because our slider is taking care of that. So update, refresh. Okay, yes, temp block recovery. Let's check. So we have testimonials, the section, and then we have slider with the 3 slides. Let's say update, refresh, and here they are. One more thing, I don't like this. It's really not pretty. Everything else with it looks so good, but this kind of ugly. So let's try to fix it. I think the cause of this is this kind of encoding characters don't go very well with React because then they are encoded again there. So instead what we want is have the characters directly, like so let's try. I copied. Okay, I copied the arrow and I included the arrow as it is. So let's do the same here. Double click to go into the text editing mode, select, copy, done, and then press C to edit code. And then here we paste in the other arrow. And now let's save. So that block got exported. So let's see. We'll probably have to recover the block. Oh no, no need. Oh, perfect. So now we have it looks good on the page and in the editor. So this was not so trivial. It was a bit of work, but what we created is also kind of amazing. So we created a slider component, a slider block that is agnostic, CSS agnostic, so we could use it in any kind of project, not necessarily Tailwind based. So we have something that we can easily reuse among projects, and we could even implement it as a plugin, and then it would be really simple to use it whenever we would want a slider like this. And then in custom projects, we would just define the slide blocks and then use the slider to easily implement the sliding functionality. So in a way, this video was long, but we also accomplished a lot. Like we created a very powerful block slider, like with all the JavaScript stuff there, and we could do more. We could customize it with block controls, and maybe this can be a subject of further tutorial one day. But I think for now I'm happy with what we have. It's very nice slider. It works very well. Yeah, so perfect. Congratulations for following this. Pinegrow is not as simple as just dragging a slider from a component library and then tweaking that a bit. But it lets us build really powerful features that we can then also reuse among our projects. Okay, so see you in the next video.